Thank you very much for your testimony.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr.Amite Dominick, and I'm representing Texas Prisons Community Advocates. I am registered against the bill as it currently stands because I'm asking for the allocation of funds for both an air purification system and air conditioning within the Texas prisons. It's important to mention that that air purification filtration system is directly attached to an HVAC system, and I think the legislators have a great opportunity to finally fix a problem that's existed for decades. Unfortunately, most of the numbers in my handout have actually increased, and I'd like to bring some perspective to some of the numbers you heard about officer deaths earlier today. As was previously stated, 69 officer deaths as of today. So putting that in perspective, we are currently leading the nation in incarcerated deaths due to COVID and officer deaths due to COVID. Of the 218 nationwide deaths among officers, 30% of those numbers actually comes from the state of Texas. The federal system reports 6 officer deaths and 262 incarcerated individuals' deaths. So I just wanted to put that in perspective. Also, as anticipated with the summer heat, we saw an increase of suicides among incarcerated individuals. So for the summer months of June through September 1st, we had 18 out of a total of 39. There's been a high of 51 in 2020, and we're closely approaching that. And there's strong information that indicates that the extreme heat and the COVID are contributing to the rise in suicides. So for decades, we've been dealing with this issue. I think this is a great opportunity to finally fix what has actually been occurring for decades. I also want to point out the issue of rural hospitals. We've heard a lot of testimony about that. The majority of our prisons are in rural areas. So we're having officers come back and forth from the prison to those rural hospitals that are further contributing to that problem. And I think my time is up. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Vice Chair Gonzalez has a question.
First and foremost, thank you for your advocacy and your work on this issue. You're right, decades. We're not talking about a year or two. We're talking about decades of problems where people have literally died. And that's not why we have a justice system, to put people to death in this way. This is dehumanizing in so many ways. And so and we have an opportunity with these funds. And so I don't really have a question per se, because you had amazing testimony, and I think anybody who understands knows that we can start the investment now, use the funds, and build on that. But I do want to say one thing that we haven't heard as much is we've heard a lot about air conditioners, but not about purification. And I guess it's new, or is that how that's new language I've heard? Can you expand on that just a little bit?
So to my understanding, TDCJ is currently using a system called the iWave in some of the very few areas that do have air conditioning. That filtration system has to be attached to the HVAC system. And I know there's information, the CDC recommended K through 12 for prevention of COVID, that they would have those air purification systems within their facilities. So I think that this would be something we can use within the Texas prisons. And also just to mention those body temperatures of individuals, some of those individuals who've passed away due to hyperthermia, their internal body temperatures were 106 to 109 degrees. So we're literally baking people in our Texas prisons. And in terms of retention also, Chairman Bonham, you mentioned that we need to do something for retention for these officers. Having that air conditioning system would help with that. Every summer, we lose more officers. It's like clockwork.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Well, we appreciate you being here, and you raise attention to a very worthwhile issue of our consideration, not just with respect to these funds, but as we go forward. And so just one thing that might be useful to myself and to others would be perhaps a multi-year plan, because this would be an expensive proposition, where not only do we have, and I understand people have worked on legislation, but a plan that lays out a strategy over time to accomplish the goal that you described, but also prioritizes where perhaps the most vulnerable populations might be, so that there's a method to the madness, if you will, and we could work on that one step at a time as we go forward.
Absolutely. I think we tried with legislation during regular session, but I just have to add to that, my AC went out this summer. I left, my home, and I think since it's been decades of this, I really feel like we're past the point of a multi-year type of program. This is a great opportunity to finally get it all done. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for being with us today. The chair calls Don.